My HOA president tried to fine me $500 for my illegal home business until I showed him my permits. I was setting up my garage workshop Saturday morning when HOA President Paul marched up with his clipboard and that self-important expression that screamed, "I peaked in middle management." "Johnson, we need to talk," he said, pointing at my woodworking tools. "I've received complaints about your illegal business operation." I paused with a drill in my hand. "What business operation?" "The noise, the deliveries, customers coming and going. You're running a commercial enterprise in a residential zone." I looked around confused. "Paul, I make furniture as a hobby. Sometimes I sell pieces online." He pulled out a printed violation notice. "500 fine for operating an unlicensed business. Plus, you need to cease all commercial activities immediately." "This is ridiculous. I'm not running a business." Paul smirked like he'd caught me red-handed. "The delivery trucks say otherwise. UPS here 3 times this week. Lumber shipments, strangers picking up furniture. That's a business, buddy. Those were materials for personal projects. And one guy buying a coffee table I posted on Facebook." "Save it for the HOA board meeting," Paul said, handing me the violation. "You've got 2 weeks to shut down or face legal action." That evening I called my neighbor Tom, who's a lawyer. "Paul's being an idiot," Tom said after I explained the situation, "but let's have some fun with this." The next week, Paul called an emergency HOA meeting about my illegal business. The community center was packed with curious neighbors. Paul stood at the front with a PowerPoint titled "Protecting Our Property Values." "As you can see," he said, clicking through photos of my garage, "Mr. Johnson has been operating a commercial woodworking business in violation of our residential zoning." He showed pictures of my workbench, my lumber stack, even a photo of the UPS truck in my driveway. "This kind of activity brings down property values and violates our community standards." When he finished, I stood up and asked if I could respond. "Actually, Paul, I'd like to introduce someone first." Tom walked in wearing his full suit, carrying a briefcase, followed by a woman in official-looking clothing. "This is Rebecca Martinez from the county zoning department," I announced. "She's here to clarify a few things." Paul's confident expression started to crack. Rebecca stepped forward. "I've reviewed Mr. Johnson's activities, and I need to correct some misconceptions here." She pulled out official documents. "First, Mr. Johnson holds a valid home occupation permit, filed properly with the county 6 months ago." Paul's face went white. "That's impossible. The HOA wasn't notified." "Because notification isn't required," Rebecca continued. "Home-based hobbies that generate occasional income are explicitly protected under state law." She turned to address the room. "Furthermore, Mr. Johnson's activities fall well within legal limits. Less than 10% of his floor space, no employees, no signage, minimal traffic." Tom stepped forward with his folder. "I've also researched HOA authority in this matter. Paul, your association has zero jurisdiction over legal home occupations." Paul tried to argue. "But the noise complaints." "Actually," I interrupted, "let's talk about those complaints." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. "This is from my security camera yesterday." The audio clearly showed Paul in my backyard, talking to my neighbor Mrs. Chen. "Have you noticed how loud his power tools are? Very disruptive, don't you think?" Mrs. Chen's voice responded. "Not really. I barely hear anything." "Well, if you did notice noise, you'd definitely file a complaint, right?" The room went silent as everyone realized Paul had been manufacturing complaints. Rebecca shook her head. "Mr. Morrison, soliciting false complaints is actually a violation of county harassment ordinances." Tom opened his briefcase. "It's also grounds for removal from HOA leadership and potential legal action for abuse of authority." Paul started backpedaling. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect the community." "By harassing a neighbor with legal permits?" Tom asked. One by one, the other HOA board members distanced themselves from Paul's actions. Within an hour, they'd called for his resignation. 2 weeks later, Paul stepped down as HOA president. The fine was voided, and I received an official apology. Rebecca became a regular customer, ordering a custom dining table and recommending my work to friends. 6 months later, my hobby had grown into a side business, generating $3,000 monthly, all completely legal. Paul moved out of the neighborhood last month. Apparently, the new HOA board started actually enforcing legitimate violations, like his unpermitted deck addition and the commercial vehicles he parks on the street. Sometimes the person screaming loudest about rule violations is the one breaking the most rules themselves.